We have been on the subject of theology, and last week we began the discussion regarding proving the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said in the subject of theology, naturally there are many ways of proving His existence, but we generally concentrate on three. And the first one that we started with was the proof of necessary existence, which is the proof of wajib al-wujud, the existence, al-wujud, whose existence is necessary, wajib. In these existence or the discussion of existence, there are two types of existences. There is something which is possible for it to be in existence and something which is necessary. A possible existence is an existence that does not exist on its own. Yeah? Rather, its existence is dependent upon something else to bring it into existence. We said the example of a possible existence is you and I. That we did not exist on our own. It took our parents to come together to bring us into existence. Therefore, there was a time when we did not exist. And after that, something brought us into existence. This is known as a possible existence. On the other side, there is a necessary existence. A necessary existence is an existence which exists on its own. It is not dependent upon anything else for its existence. And because it is not dependent upon anything else for its existence, it means that it has no beginning nor does it have an end. It is something which has always existed. Right? Anytime something brings something into existence, it by definition no longer can be called a necessary existence. So now we have proved that there is a necessary existence, or we have defined rather what is a necessary existence and what is a possible existence. And when it comes to the realm of existences, then there's only three possibilities based on those definitions. One, everything is a possible existence. Two, everything is a necessary existence. And number three, there are some existences which are necessary and some which are possible. So logically, there are only three possibilities. That's where we left off last week. Let's continue a little bit forward. When it comes to how to discuss each possibility, let's look at the first one. The first one is that every existence is a necessary existence. Again, these definitions sometimes are wordy, but they're important to grain in. A necessary existence, we said, is something that always existed, that is not dependent upon any other existence to exist. This possibility, I think, is very easy to refute, because when we look at our own existence, we accept that we are not a necessary existence. And therefore, because you and I are not necessary existences, because this stick, something had to mold it and create it, something had to mold and create this podium, all of these are examples that we have necessary, non-necessary existences all around us. And therefore, the first possibility that everything is a necessary existence is very easy to say. This is impossible. And so we eliminate that very quickly, that it's impossible for all existence to be necessary. We now come to the second point, or the second possibility, and that is that every existence is a possible existence. That every existence is a mumkin al-wujud. Right? Now, how do we refute this, or how do we fight this? The first thing that we again have to understand is the definition. Right? So a possible existence is something that does not exist on its own. I am not in existence on my own. Rather, not just my creation was dependent, right? Even till today, I am dependent. I am dependent on air. I am dependent on food. I am dependent on so many things. If these external factors get shut off from me, my existence ceases to exist. You take away oxygen from me, I will die, right? And therefore, my existence by definition is a dependent existence, right? And so, how can we prove that it is not possible for all existences to be possible existences? Y'all with me? Inshallah, yeah? The impossibility of this possibility, subhanAllah, I got to come up with better words, The impossibility of this clause that all existences are possible existences can be proven through two means, right? The first is that if all existences were possible, this would mean that each of them would require a cause to bring it into existence, correct? We established this. So for something to be a possible existence, something had to bring it into existence. That means it required an illah. It required a cause to bring its effect into reality. If this is the case, that means that there has to be, for my existence, something which brought me into existence. So let's just look at me as an example. I was brought into existence by my parents. They were brought into existence by their parents, right? How far do we go back, right? And so to try to see whether or not it's possible for all existences to be possible. And so you can say, well, their grandparents were brought by their parents and their parents and their parents. And we go back, and we can go all the way back to Adam, alayhi salam, right? And we can trace it. This is why we're all Bani Adam, right? Was Adam a necessary existent? Was his existence always there? It wasn't. Therefore, even Adam required a cause to bring it into existence. Yeah? And this continued regression of possibilities is known as tasalsul, an infinite chain of regression. And an infinite chain of regression is impossible. There has to be a beginning to this chain. And if there is something that is the beginning of that chain, that existence could not have been brought by any other existence. Therefore, by default, the original creation had to come from a necessary existent. Right? You get it? This is really nice, right? Because you can't keep going back. This is like a chain. Yeah, if you have a chain, it's known as tasalsul. But if you take the example of a chain, like a metal chain, they're interlocked with each other. But there is one chain that starts off the connection. You can't just have an infinite chain, right? And similarly, when it comes to existences, you can't have an infinite regression of possible existences. It has to start somewhere. And if we agree that it starts somewhere, but yet that existence also dependent, then we need something else. And so there has to come a start. When there has to be an existence which is not dependent upon any other existence. And therefore, by default, it is impossible to have an infinite chain of regression, and therefore it is impossible to have all existences which are possible. Right. Good? Yeah? Inshallah. This is why we record these lectures. You can go back and listen to them, inshallah. But these points are important. Right? Again, like I said, the reason for proving these things is what? Right? It's not so I can debate some people. It doesn't matter. Right? So that I can debate shaitan when shaitan tries to put a doubt in my head that there is no God. I'd be like, no, let me prove to you why there has to be an existence which is necessary. These points are important, right? Yes, maybe our children will need them, maybe we will need them, but the most important reason for these proofs is to solidify our own iman. Yeah? It's one thing to believe in something, remember, but it's one thing entirely when I can prove why I believe in that thing. Right? And so these proofs are essential. And so the first way of proving that not every existence can be possible is by looking at the definition that an infinite chain of regression, which is known as tasalsul, is impossible. And so there has to be a start to it. Another way of also looking at this, if one says that forget a chain, let's look at a circle, right? Let's say A created B, and then B created C, right? But then let's just also say C created A. Yeah? You understand? So like we're looking at a circle and say, but look, we don't have to go in a chain. We can just say A created B, B created C, C created D. But if we keep going E, F, G, then we just get a bigger and a bigger circle. But for a circle to connect, it has to go back to A, ahsantum, yeah? And so someone may argue that A created B, B created C, C created A. And then that means that at the same time, A was in existence and not in existence at the same time. Isn't it? Right? And this is what's known as a vicious circle or dawr. And even a dawr is impossible because one thing cannot be two diametrically opposed characteristics at the same time. A cannot be not in existence and existence at the same time. And therefore, through these two proofs, we conclude then that all existences cannot be possible existences. So we have disproved number one, that all existences cannot be necessary. We have disproved number two, that all existences cannot be possible. And therefore the only possibility that we are left with is that there are some existences that are wajib and some existences that are mumkin. Yeah? And this is where we will continue next week, because we have now proved that there has to be a necessary existence. The next step in this journey is to prove why there can only be one necessary existence and not multiple necessary existence. So far, we haven't even talked about God yet. Yeah? We're just trying to prove that there has to be an existence that is independent of everyone else. And our next step, inshallah, is try to prove that why there can only be one such existence in creation. Wa akhiru da'wan anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.